It's my pleasure and delight this morning to be talking to Andrew Benson Greene Jr., who lives in Maryland, Baltimore, is a university student currently studying a master's in science in law and IP law. I've been following Andrew online, perhaps, I'm not sure, 2 or 3 years. And our communication has mainly been on there. But I was really keen today to bring you a little taste of Andrew and his commitment to humanity. He's been working in the cause of peace and non-violence. He's had various charitable initiatives happening, and he's also addressed the United Nations on a number of occasions. So for any of the listeners that are really keen to continue their work in this kind of field, I'm hoping some of the things we'll learn today from Andrew will support that. So thanks for joining me and being agreeable to having this conversation. Awesome.
It's a pleasure to join you and to be on this other part of the planet and to respond to your call for an interview and to discuss basically some of the things I love doing in transforming lives and empowering people who, in the face of very high challenges, are able to listen and learn from my experiences and insight.
Yes, yeah. Yes. So you've been working for peace and non-violence for a long time. Where did that begin?
So in my high school, I developed a passion for creative writing and arts, and seeing the world in its natural form of beauty and to express that through arts also was joyful. But I want to translate that inner joy in a resounding way that could help others, experience what I experienced, just navigating in a world of my own through my creative abilities of arts, fine arts and drawings and literature and poetry. So I found a platform for my activism when I went during my undergrad at the University of Sierra Leone, where I joined with a host of other vibrant young activists at the time, the likes of Sheku Kamara, who helped to transform my thinking about peace through his Peace Child project. Vandi Kanyako and others, Teddy Fode Musa were all relevant young leaders at the time who had pursued programs that I loved. And they really loved me on board because they realized I could inject some creativity in their programs. So with that effort, that became an early start of my activism. But I realized that innovation could also help in a way to propel, the peace process. So I encouraged initiatives of blending a combination of creative approaches and technologies. So my first stint with that was through the International Education Resource Network, which was a global education project. And there I started to launch my campaign to use innovation as a kind of attraction to kids and young people who were emerging from the 10 years of war.
Yeah.
So that became the magnet. But technology doesn't stand on its own without the passion of love, of peace, of creativity. So that's where I came from. Even though I had the technology background, after doing a couple of months of technology programs on a local level, I used the God-given creative abilities in me to be in the loop there to help create a new window of opportunities to a flurry of young people who were lost of direction and hope at the time.
Yeah.
And lost in the wilderness of the ensuing war years and emerging from those pains. So how do we relieve the pain? Through arts, through innovation, but also through our common humanity of love. of compassion, of tolerance. So having been nurtured in that domain to think not just about myself, but for others, I worked on all fours, stayed on the loop, and developed creative, innovative programs. And I must say, I'm deeply pleased at the outcome.
Yes.
That small but bold steps, I was able to inspire a critical mass of young people who today have branched out to not just heal from the trauma of the war, but they've also begun to set up their own individual programs, either in radio, in drama, creating workstations and technology centers. Some have gone ahead to be major dramatists or playwrights. Others have, in fact, won awards at the international level. And many others have gone beyond borders trying to pursue the dreams. And this in itself is joyful in my heart because it shows that those times of sacrifice really propelled me to do what I did was by far and large, becoming an impact and creating a ripple effect indirectly in society with all these young people branching out to do things that are positive.
Yeah.
So with that effort, I became recognized by the United Nations.
Yes.
And that recognition didn't quite come as an easy feat because for many years, I've demonstrated commitment, courage, and creativity in my work. And because of news and media, the word began to go around. And first it was the Cable and Wireless Awards in England, which was a ChildNet Awards that really created the global perspective about my work. But once I began to be accepted into the UN to talk and to share my information, it became an endorsement for a work that was critical in a country that was recovering from, several years where news feed was not a common way of life. We are blacked out from, for the most part, from the rest of the world. And internet became the safest haven for us to, articulate what was happening, to tell our stories, more importantly, and to share and learn from others across the divide.
So one of the initiatives that I've seen a lot of photographs online in more recent times is a initiative where you're getting teddy bears and they're being gifted to young children. Tell us what's behind that. Tell us how that came about.
So I started the Be Gifted Foundation as a way to actually focus more on the creative aspect and with this little thing of technology, but it builds on my past effort with international education programs, but it doesn't turn a blind eye on the essence of education and learning, not just of the mind, but of the heart.
Yes.
And in gifting kids, even with small tokens like that, they could remember that for life and inculcate the habit of being, able to share with others as well. And the fact that they have their own gifts as kids, which they could also use to transform society for the better. So I am in a situation where I have foreseen that kids who have been constrained either because of the post-war effect or economic hardship or the devastating Ebola outbreak and its effects or the recent mudslide that occurred that really killed a lot of people there, they will be thrilled to have just somebody who has been there like themselves, who have been a toddler like them, or a young person growing up in a country like that, who understands the very pain they feel of not getting a single toy during holiday period, to have a gift from someone or some friends who think about them.
Yeah.
That's a sense of generosity that gives them hope and joy in their hearts. So, I mean, that initiative started like 9 years ago when I visited amputee camps in the northern part of the country. And I was distraught to see that the kids have the shared burden of the emotional trauma that the elders faced because their parents were really in pain. So because of that tragedy and the transferred psychological trauma on those kids, I felt that helping the amputees themselves was great, but also helping to bring joy in the hearts of the kids was also a good way to help the society to heal.
Mm.
So I jumped into that opportunity to help those kids. And I realized that it should not stop there because there are other categories of young people in different parts of the country who are still really in a lot of hardship, emotional struggles, and the country needs them for the future.
Yeah.
And it starts with small things, the little light of hope.
Yes.
Small gifts like that goes a long way to show that they are not alone and that others do care for them.
Yes. When I toured, as you might know, with Patch Adams some years back, and we visited orphanages in Russia, Moscow and St. Petersburg, and
Right.
Patch had been doing that for 30 years. And
Amazing.
yes, some of some of the children, like some orphanages, he visited every year. So children are in those orphanages until they're 16. And each time, for those who had been there last year or the year before, um, they waited each year for November for when he would come with the clowns, and they would draw. So every single one of us came home with many drawings from many children, and we didn't have the wherewithal to take a whole bunch of toys, but we all had other things. We did have some toys, um, but it was that exchange. And look, I remember one of the things that I took was just a key ring with my photograph of myself and my puppet, um, dressed as clowns. And, the caregivers said they will treasure that forever. So a tiny thing, but the fact that you came,
Yeah,
we arrived,
absolutely. Yeah.
and we brought some joy, and we were really present to them. Like, it wasn't just a happy time, it was actually a very sad time often to see
Yeah.
the level of poverty. But because of that connection, we just engaged so deeply, and it was like, I call it intimate communion. Um, and they're my treasured moments from that period of time. You were saying to me earlier, you're currently studying science in law and IP law. So tell us
Yeah.
about that and why you're doing that.
So the law has been part of my journey. In my undergrad, I did some aspects of law, wanted to swerve into law immediately after the war years, but that changed my perception, and I worked on nonprofit projects for many years. And branching into law right now provides me those key principles that I need to use in public policies. But more importantly, IP law is related to my innovation trend that I have pursued over time. But this time with a more, realistic approach to understanding some of the rules that govern intellectual property and how I can use that to help support not just my initiative, but public policy issues and to settle disputes and, that may arise from the many issues of, people trampling on other person's property and ideas and creative inventions that may be usurped by other people. So in trying to address those disputes, this lane of law is very significant.
Yeah,
So that's the reason why I branch out.
yeah. And I think, isn't it true, you know, the degree to which we can deliver into that heart space requires more than just heart intelligence. We've got to bring our mind to it and really be looking at that broader, all-encompassing picture of
Right.
what we want to create. So where do you see yourself in 10 years' time?
That's a good question. I would say first, in the short term, in 5 years' time, I think I could have created some innovative trend that could help in a way that defines my life's purpose of giving back to communities, but also can create the resources so that I could support projects that I'm passionate about. So I'm looking at invention and doing a business company here in Baltimore as a startup. Hopefully using that platform to generate resources in a philanthropic way to support many of our programs, not just the projects I care about, but possibly help others who in similar line are trying to change society for the better. But in the 10 years frame, I think I would have supported, the entire young people in Sierra Leone to have access to creative and innovative education, which is the predominant working tool today that kids will need to just not just relate to the country and develop it, but also compete globally.
Yeah.
So in the next 5 years and 10 years, that's my projection.
Awesome. Awesome. Andrew, I see you as such a beacon. When we shine our light and have the courage to step out and step up, to be brave enough to ask for, others' support and to be inviting that in. And what I love is that comes when your efforts are all in a good cause, when they're worthwhile. And now more than ever, do we all need to be in that place, I think, to go with what's in our heart, use all our intelligences to bring something to fruition, and then live into that purpose. So
Absolutely.
I look forward, we should, in our minds, we'll lock in a date and come back in 5 and 10 years and do another interview.
I would rather say probably 2 years more, and we can do more interviews. But I think you touched on your own aspects of generosity and helping the kids in Moscow, where I visited some years ago, but for a global education program. But in my view, the compelling stories of kids doing their own arts and transforming what they've got, those gifts, into arts and sharing their talents is essentially one of my, ultimate goals in my programs, to unleash that creativity in the young people so that they could start out very early and develop. And they have started a few artwork, which I will show you in the foreseeable future.
Yes,
and
I'll share with you some. I'll share with you some from that tour.
Right.
I actually purchased a very large mural painted by the Orphans, and this one particular Russian lady personally transitioned about 300 orphans every year. So they would leave the orphanage and spend a period of time, I'm not sure how long, but they all transitioned through their household so that they had some experience of family life and preparation for stepping out and looking for work. you know, their environment in the orphanages is very limited and restrictive.
Right.
Things are opening up and flourishing more in that area now, but it's still a problem. And there are so many. There are millions, millions of orphanages. It's just unbelievable.
And now with global things that are happening, you know, migration and establishment of societies by war, natural disasters is just a wake-up call for humanity to step on board and try to help in whatever little way we can, because the problems are just mind-blowing and we see it every day in the news, and we feel an urgency to do a little bit in our own little way because every little bit helps.
Yes.
And
And
thank you for
I think
bringing
there
joy
is,
to the world.
yeah, there is a pivotal word, a sense of urgency. So true.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank
absolutely.
you so much for today. This has just been extraordinary. I know listeners will be heartened by your work and prompted to be stepping up in their own if they're not already. Thank you so much. We're going to talk again at some point. And yeah, I bid you farewell for now.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and this brings us much closer, having been able to talk while virtually online for a considerable number of years, following up on our progress. And thanks for bringing joy into our world through those simple but bold steps from, you know, the other side of the planet in Australia to the world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.